Hello everyone and welcome to Blue Tengu's live game development show where we show everything that goes into making a game from concept to completion. If you've ever wanted to make a game, we hope this will help lower the barrier to entry, maybe give you the nudge you needed to try it yourself. Even if you don't want to make a game, we hope you'll find some value in what we're doing here. All of the information about where you can find us is in the Twitch info down below or in our YouTube profile for those of you who are catching us later on YouTube. But just in case, we're at www.bluetengu.com, btengu on Twitter, facebook.com, bluetengu studio, youtube.com, bluetengu studio for those of you watching the live stream now, and Twitch TV bluetengu for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. If you missed any of the episodes so far, you can always catch them over at YouTube, but you shouldn't have any trouble following along even if you haven't seen them. For those of you who haven't seen the show on Twitch or YouTube before, my name's Eric. I'm a game designer living in Japan who's trying to show you everything that goes into making a game for about 2 hours a week, including all the ums and ahs and awkward debugging moments, which we're going to have plenty of, I'm sure, today. The reason I'm showing it all, as opposed to making the game first and scripting out a rehearsed tutorial, is because I want to lower the barrier people feel about making a game, and I hope inspire you to go out and try it yourself. Thank you to everyone who dropped by last week, and to all of those of you who watched the video on YouTube. For those of you who are with me here on Twitch, sorry, coffee's not kicking in. Feel free to drop suggestions or ask questions at any time. I may not be able to answer them right away because I am, working, but I'll try to get to them. And if I can't, please send me a private message here, or leave a comment on our site or YouTube video, and I'll do my best to address it next time. If any of you are out there making something and you don't mind showing it off, send me a link and I'd love to see it. At this time, every week, for 2 hours, I come onto Twitch TV to work on the game Project Spaghetti, which is going to eventually be a top-down 2D cowboy shooter, where the bullets... Not sure why that happened. I guess it went over to the break screen. I don't need a break yet. Hopefully my voice went over that. But anyway, at this time every week for 2 hours I come on to Twitch TV to work on the game Project Spaghetti, which is a 2D cowboy shooter, where the bullets fired bounce around the screen with a pinball mechanic. In the past few weeks I've been making the enemies more dangerous to the player, giving them the ability to shoot, move around the screen, giving them a little AI. Last week I began to implement an enemy approach pattern, where they come off the sides of the screen and start attacking the player. And to give the player a little bit more warning about where they're coming from, I added indicator arrows to show where the next enemy will be approaching from. Since I had a defined number of enemies, I was also able to create a win condition for the stage, that being, when the player kills all of the enemies that are in that stage, they move to the next room, which for now is just the game over screen, same thing as if they lose all their lives. But in the future, it will be like either a victory screen or, eventually another level. Today I'm going to pull all of that enemy's functionality out into a class so that I can pave the way for making a variety of enemies in the future. One of the factors that's going to make enemies different is how able they are to dodge bullets, whether they're able to dodge pretty much almost anything you throw at them, unless you happen to time it right and get 2 bullets going at them at the same time, or whether they're able to, or whether they're just able to dodge the slowest bullets or something like that. It's going to make the enemy difficulty very different. So I need to give the basic enemy type a dodge feature first, then I'll move all of that enemy functionality out into class. To explain what a class is for those of you who haven't done like object-oriented programming or any of that stuff, it's a really simple idea. It's just it's like an abstract concept. It's, if you've got bad guy 1, bad guy 2, bad guy 3, they're all bad guys, and that, you can, if they all have black hats, for example, then you can put that black hat stuff into the bad cowboy class, and then, the stuff that's different is the only thing you have to worry about. So if you decide suddenly that all of your bad guys no longer have black hats but pink hats, then, you can just change one spot instead of changing all of those places. That's all that is. To be more specific on what a class is, a class is just, it's the template that you use to make objects, which we've been making so far. Like objects are actual things in the game, specific things. You know, they've got their coordinates, they've got what they're doing, they've got their variables, everything else. A class is just the template from which they're stamped from. You know, if it was a factory, you know, it'd be the template, and all the stuff that comes down the line would be objects. But, you know, you can use classes as kind of a container, and then you can also, you know, have classes inherit from classes. So like that thing I was talking about where there's one bad cowboy class that covers all bad cowboys, that would be called a parent class, you know, and all of these things would be like child classes from that, to use like a more object-oriented programming language. But, you know, first let's go over to GameMaker and actually see where I am right now. So jump to the desktop and fire up GameMaker first. And again, sorry about that, you know, intermission thing coming. I must have like hit the arrow key or something and caused that to happen. So let's see, Project Spaghetti. All right, let's just hit play. And this is where we are now. I mean, I did get the enemies where they come off from the sides of the screen. The arrow shows where they're coming in from. You know, I can still shoot and everything else. If the enemies shoot properly, and then bullets fly around the screen. There should be about 5 enemies. Obviously, they can hit each other with their bullets because they follow the same rules. And the longer I leave them alive, the more dangerous it gets to the player. I also, you know, last week have all this debugging stuff. So, like, if I want to see the paths that the enemies are moving on, I hit F1, and I can see that. F2, I think, let's see, what did that do? That shows the directions enemies can fire, because there's only 8 directions they can fire. And 3 just stops them shooting. F3 stops them shooting. So that's my debugging functionality for now. So, you know, right now, if I shoot at an enemy, they just take the bullet and die. That's fine, but the problem is, you know, now that the player knows where they're coming from, the player can just get to where they are and shoot them before they even have a chance to do anything. That's not much of a game, so I need to change that. So minimize this, and I'll go over to Trello.com, where I keep my task list, you know, my to-do list. I do kind of follow agile principles in this project, so for those of you who haven't been watching the show so far, you know, I did explain, you know, what agile is and at least how I'm using it. You know, there's probably as many varieties as agile as there are people, so everyone's going to have a different opinion on it, and I don't, you know, if I was with a team, I'd be doing things very differently, but I am alone, so, you know, a lot of things like estimating and, you know, the way I fit tasks in is kind of tailored to just being an individual. Ideally, if you were in a team, you'd do it differently, but this works for me so far. This has been, you know, my 2nd month, so, you know, every time entering a new month, I did it in August as well, but entering a new month, I kind of look over my task list to make sure that I'm kind of on track, or at least know what's going on. So far, let's see, from episode 9, okay, I have my notes here that I, you know, when I went through it. My week 8 burn down, what burn down is the number of, like these task, like hours. I have them calculated as hours, but the number of these that I've been able to do per episode is about 2.4, which means, you know, like right now for episode 10, I have 2.25, which means I should be able to do all of these tasks this episode, you know, given my past performance. And so what I can do from that is, you know, I did set a December deadline for getting, you know, the basic game in place. And from there, you know, I can expand it out with other levels, at, you know, new graphics, everything like that. But just the basic game is going to be done in December. You know, as kind of a deadline I set for myself, which means there's 18 weeks left. You know, if I take, you know, that burn down, you know, I said 2.5 just to keep the calculation simple, but, you know, if I just calculate how much I can get done by the end of this year, there's 18 weeks, which means 18 times 2.5, which is 45. And over here in my task list, you know, I use Scrum for Trello, a plugin that, you know, calculates all these things. Like, all you have to do is put like the number in parentheses here, and it automatically adds it all up and everything else. You know, in terms of tasks, I should be able to get everything in this list done by the time December rolls around. Of course, it's hard to tell. Some of these tasks later on, like graphics polishing, maybe I'm happy with the graphics as they are now. In that case, some of these tasks will disappear. Or maybe, you know, music and some of these things will turn out to be easier than I expected or harder than I expected. So, the problem with estimating is there's absolutely no way to know whether it's right or not. But that's the whole point of Agile, basically. You just put your higher priority stuff at the top and just kind of work your way down and add value. I've already got a basic working game. I wouldn't want to put this thing on the market or anything, because it's definitely not ready for that. But, there's probably some point at which I'll get to where it's like, okay, this is actually a fun game. I wouldn't mind having people play this. There's more I can do with it, but, once I get to that point, then everything else after that is just adding value to that. It still works by priority. Adding more higher value stuff first and, minor things later means, the longer I go, the more and more it becomes apparent that it's worth just putting it on sale, for example. But that's why Agile is kind of attractive as opposed to something called Waterfall, which just says, this is everything I want to go in the game by X date, and, calculating backwards and saying, all right, we need to get this done by here, this done by here, this done by here, this done by here. Unfortunately, with that, once one of those things in the chain, gets late, then everything else gets pushed back. For anyone who's worked in game development, I'm sure they know exactly what that means. It means lots of overtime or delaying your game. So let's jump into this so I don't just keep chatting at you. After the last episode, one thing I did do was, I was having trouble with that array count thing, and I did figure out the problem. Let's see. I was using something called array length to get the length of the array that I was using. Unfortunately, that was not what I was supposed to be using, apparently. It's supposed to be array height, because I was using a two-dimensional array. And, the way I have it in my mind is, the arrays go out like this, but apparently in GameMaker they go like this in terms of the way they're represented internally. But all I had to do was change length to height, and I fixed that problem. So for those of you who saw that last week, that's the solution to the problem. I did post a note on the YouTube video with the same information, because I did solve that afterwards. And I also added sprite animation, so let me show you what that means. These arrow indicators that I had, when I first started, all I had was the graphic, but to actually have them animating so that they kind of flash a little bit, I went into here with Edit Sprite, and then I went to Animation, and GameMaker does have a few things to help you with sprite animation. I used Disappear. When you do that, it says the number of frames you want it to disappear, and I think I picked 15. Yeah, so frame 15, it's pretty much gone. Picked 15 to have it disappear, and then I did the reverse, from 15 to 30. It starts at image 0, so there are 30 frames, which is 1 second worth of animation in this game. That makes, the strobing easy. If you do strobing, I guess one thing I should mention, the fact that I'm using a red color, for example, and that I have it, flashing, one thing you have to be very, very careful about when you have like flashing colors and stuff, I guess it's one of those things that, people in the industry definitely know about, because, usually publishers are very strict about this thing, and if you submit to, any of the big hardware makers like, Sony, Microsoft, etc., they're going to check for it, but, quickly, it has to be a certain pace, I think, but quickly like strobing or repeatedly strobing like red color can also induce seizures in people who are watching it. So if you have like a lot of flashing lights and stuff, that happens. The Simpsons made fun of it. Speaking of Simpsons, I guess I should show off here, but there's my Mr. Sparkle shirt. Do love the Simpsons, but they did an episode making fun of like the Pokemon incident, because Pokemon did have like these flashing sequences that caused seizures in kids and things like that. So it is something you have to be careful of if you're an indie developer. Look that stuff up. Make sure that you're not, creating something that's gonna hurt people, obviously. But, just as kind of a keyword to think of, if you've got like something flashing, then it's probably worth looking into. But enough of that. So that is like the stuff I did do in overtime here. So I'll move that off to the side. I also made sure that the arrow flashes and then the enemy comes out. Before, I think it was just the arrow was on the screen and the enemy was already coming out. So I did do that stuff. So the first thing I want to do today is to get the bad cowboys actually dodging. I should have actually added the task in here, but I'm also going to need Baokoi. Alright. Yeah, coffee's really not kicking in. Bad cowboy, let's see, action, dodge, graphic, rough graphic. This won't take long, but just to make sure that I have it, a record of it. Just like the player is able to, squeeze down and duck. Let me show that actually. I think I have it attached to spacebar. Yeah. So if I hit spacebar, the player ducks. I need to, create the same look for the enemy as well. So to do that, I'm going to need to go over to Photoshop. And I'm going to need to do two things here. Or I'm going to need to open two files. One is just the bad cowboy, the basic graphic. Let me zoom in on that. And I need my grid. Okay, so I can see exactly where the pixels are. And I'm also going to need to open up player. And let's see. Do I not have PSD with that? Wow. Okay, well that's something I should probably do actually. This is not in the Photoshop file for the player, so I do need to add that in. That's scary. That would have been awesome if I'd have found that out later. So let's see, new layer. I want to make sure that everything that I have related to the player is in one file, if possible. Yeah. So that, if I ever need to pull out this dodge animation or fix it, I can just come to player. But I can keep that layer hidden for now. Let me save that. And I just need to do the same thing for the bad cowboy. So make a new layer. And let's see, what would be easier? To take this one and copy it over and change the colors? That'd probably be easier, I think. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to pull this over to here. Put it in the same place, and then just copy the colors from this layer to here. So that the bad cowboy looks the exact same. I think with white, let's see, how did I do this? Hold on a second. Black arms, okay. That's not going to be that hard to figure out. And then I think this in the middle. I went a little bit too far there, didn't I? Did I move this down too much? Yes. Okay, there we go. And I need to give him some socks. Okay, let's see. Let's make sure everything... Oh, I need to fix his hat too. Alright, that should be the ducked version of this. So the bad cowboy has the white vest, black, and everything else. Yep, okay. Save that. Save that, and I can close this, and I just have to make a PNG of this. And the reason I'm using PNG is because it allows for transparency. And let's see, with the player I used player-dodge. So that's that. Okay. So now that rough graphic is done. Now let's go and put it in. First thing I need to do is actually add the sprite in here. Create sprite. Just to make sure I'm using the same naming for everyone. And actually I should probably do this smarter. I should actually copy exactly what I'm doing with the player. Because there's collision and everything else inside of there. So it's probably just easier for me to change the graphic out. Okay. And because I've doubled the resolution on everything, I just need to keep this size. Okay, so that should, let me just make sure that collision's there. Yep, collision's fine. Yep, looks the same. Alright, so now I do have the sprite cowboy dodge thing. I do need to look over at my player and see exactly how I did that dodge for him. Where exactly did I change that animation? Must be in here. Yep, okay, that's where I did that. So when the enemy's ducking, they need to change their sprite to the ducking sprite. And I'm also going to need to make sure that the enemy can't shoot while they're dodging too. So let's just copy and paste this over into here, and I think I had it at begin step, right? Yeah, begin step. So bad cowboy, begin step. Obviously, since the bad cowboy has AI and everything else, it's a lot more complicated than just the player. Yeah, one problem with Game Maker is that the copy and pasting kind of sucks. You can never really tell exactly where it's copying and pasting stuff. So who knows where that stuff went. I guess, I hope at the beginning. I hope all this stuff went at the beginning. Looks like it did. And I want to change this dodge cooldown to enemy dodge cooldown. And enemy shoot to 1. And sprite bad cowboy dodge. Otherwise, if they're not dodging, then just use the standard standing in place one. Okay, so now I just need to figure out how to set this. I thought about this last week, and I think to do it, what I want to do is have probably a collision around the bad cowboy that detects. Well, actually, I don't even need a collision, do I? Just a bullet distance. See how far a bullet is from the bad cowboy and duck if the bullet is close. That seems like the best way to do it. There's going to be one tricky thing, and that is the bullet being close is nice, but whether the bullet's actually coming for the bad cowboy or not, because if the bullet's obviously not going to hit them, but it's close enough, then they're going to duck, even though the bullet's not coming for them, which is going to look kind of strange. So I do need to worry about that. And I am going to take just a quick break because I need to do something really fast, but I will be right back. Thank you for waiting. I'm back from my quick break. I did have to take care of something, but where I am right now is trying to figure out how to get the bad cowboy to dodge. And let's see, heading back into that object, I do have, I did bring over the stuff for the player to dodge, but I need to figure out when the enemy is going to dodge. To do that, I could have set, just a perimeter around the bad cowboy. If a bullet enters that perimeter, to have them dodge. I could also try to detect the distance to the bullet. That's another way to do it. The problem is it's hard to tell whether the bullet's coming straight for them or not. So I need to figure that out. Probably the easiest way to do it, I don't know if it'd be easy or not, but probably detect the bullet distance, then take the bullet's current velocity, I guess, and try to calculate, maybe a second later or something where that bullet's going to be. If it's, in the bad cowboy's head, then maybe it's better to have them duck. So let's see. As long as they are able to duck, the dodge cooldown is less than global dodge cooldown. Then have them dodge, but I'm going to need a little bit more in here than that. Maybe before I worry about animation, I should worry about whether they're dodging or not. So let's see, I want to do distance, don't I? Yeah, let's look that up. So GameMaker distance to object. I think I remembered the function. Distance to object. So if the distance to object, let's say bullet, is less than, let's see, I always have to do this as a function of the resolution, because if I change the resolution later, it's going to screw with all of this logic. So let's say, for example, the room width is 640. Okay, let's do this the easy way first, and just see what we get with it. For all I know, it may actually look just fine. I doubt it, but in this case, if it's 10 units away, it's 64 pixels at the current resolution. If the bullet is that far away, they're just going to initiate a dodge. Hopefully. Let's see, what else do we have to do? Anything else? Yeah, I need to take some more player stuff. I need to change the cooldown in the step, because I don't want the enemy to just be able to constantly dodge. That wouldn't be very fun. And I'm going to need to actually make that dodge cooldown thing too. and that's going to be in create. So set up the variable, give them the same cooldown as the player for now. I could change it for the enemy. In fact, that's probably one of the things I do want to change later when I make multiple enemy types, is some can dodge all the time, some can barely dodge at all, just to give them a variety and difficulty and stuff. Okay, so let's see, that keeps counting up. Don't I need something to set it to 0? Let's see, step, which one's this? Okay, this is what stops them moving. Hopefully I don't leave any of these PL dodge cooldowns in here, otherwise whenever the player's ducked, all the enemies are going to stop moving. That's no good. Let's see, PL shoot to 0. PL shoot to 1. Let's see, okay. So when they do initiate a dodge, I need to set this to 0. So that also needs to be in the step somewhere. So if they dodge, this has to be true. Well, I guess that's easy enough to do. In here. Well, no, not in there. In here? So if they actually do dodge, yeah, since that's the same check that I had in the player thing. So if they have a cooldown, turn the shooting off. And I do want to make sure that if this EM shoot is 1, they do not shoot as well. Okay, well it looks like I'm already using EM shoot anyway, so that's fine. Yeah, and I guess I do want to trigger that alarm as well. So if they do dodge, then I do want to make sure that they can't shoot right when they pop up. Let me make sure I do that the same as I did the player as well. Alarm. I had it just a second ago. I just have to find where I'm using that alarm. He'll shoot to 0. Okay, so it's 15 steps for them. For the bad cowboy, let's see, what do I do? This one. Okay, so I want to set this same alarm. So 3 seconds. If they dodge, they don't shoot for 3 seconds. Okay, let's see. That should theoretically be enough to get them dodging. We'll find out though. So if the bullet's close enough, set the dodge cooldown to 0, which means they have to wait for their next dodge. Set it so that they can't shoot. Reset the timer on the shooting. Change their graphic. And as long as they're able to dodge, and as long as they're close enough to the bullet, this should happen. So theoretically it should work, but who knows if I introduced some sort of bug into here. It should be interesting. Didn't seem to work. Okay, it's probably not detecting that these bullets are close. Which means none of these, this isn't working. Rim width times 64. Times 64. I don't think I want to do times 64. Let's see, rim width times 64 divided by 64 was what I meant first off. Let's see if that fixes it first before looking into it further. No. Okay, so I probably do want to do some debug stuff. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to need to use some debug messaging just to see what's going on here. First thing I guess I want to check is whether... Not sure why that's the thing that got copied, but... Okay, let's do it this way. Actually, let's say bullet is close. So if it successfully detects that the bullet's close enough, then bring that in. Next thing is whether they can dodge or not. So if I never see this message, it means that that distance to the bullet thing isn't working the way I expect it to. If I see that but I don't see this, then it means that dodge cooldown stuff is not working the way I expect it to. So at least I can narrow down the problem that way. Yeah, it looks like the bullet's close, but it's a little too close, I think, is the problem. Yeah, it might be just that the bullet's too close, so that they are ducking, but they're just not ducking in time. Another thing is because I need to add one more thing, actually, that I think is causing a problem. If they're ducked, then I need to make sure that they don't have that bullet collision on. Where am I doing that? Bullets? Draw GUI. I should move all of that out of player as well. I need to remember that. Let me make a note of that. That won't take long at all, but just to make sure that I don't forget it, because all of this stuff shouldn't be inside of player. Wow, that is a good question. Where am I doing that stuff? If an expression is true. Okay, it's this. That's probably not where it should be. Player dodge cooldown is greater than. So if they're not dodging, then destroy the bullet instance. That's interesting. I guess I should put that in here then. May not be the best place for it to be, but I have to think about that a little bit. Okay, so I am doing that up here. So I need to copy this stuff over to the bad cowboy thing as well. So if they're dodging, then don't do any of this stuff, is basically what I needed to add. Also, they're ducking too late, which is another problem, I think. So I need to fix that bit. And that's in here. So instead of divided by 64, let's try dividing by 32 and see if they start ducking a little earlier for us. No mission critical bugs, at least. Bullet's close. It's definitely detecting that the bullet is close. It's just not triggering that cooldown stuff. Okay, so that's, at least I've isolated where the problem is. The problem is this. EM dodge cooldown is never less than this. Which makes sense, I think. Because with the player, it's triggered by hitting space. With this guy, it's not. Let's start it out at 0. So the enemy is able to dodge right away. Every step, it increments that. And as long as it's greater than that, then the enemy should be able to dodge. Let's see, so if it's greater than that, then they're able to dodge. Okay, I think maybe it was just a greater than less than thing. Hopefully. There we go. Okay, now they're dodging, they're just very, very quick about it. Yeah, way, 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 way too quick. They're not doing the same thing as the player, which is staying down. They're just kind of dodging an instant and then coming up. They're also taking the bullets, which is no good. Okay, so there's multiple problems in there because of that. Let's see, begin step. So if the bullet's close enough, then do that. If dodge cooldown is less than something, then I want them to be ducked. I see. I think it's because I have this inside of here, which is not always going to work. So I should probably make the part that initiates the dodge in one place and then this be something else. Yeah, I see what the problem is. It's just which parts to pull out into what. So this is what initiates the dodge. So this stuff is the equivalent of the spacebar key. So let's first pull this out. Hopefully I don't mess things up too much. Let me add some comments in here so I know what these things are. Okay, so that's one check. The next check I want to do is this. Okay, if the bullet is close, try to dodge, and as long as their dodge cooldown is small enough, then dodge. So that's where I want to put this. And I want this to be just if this is true. And that else gets paired with that. Then I need this out here, right? Yeah, using the GUI for if-else statements is always an exercise. It's like an IQ test or something. Okay, which one's paired with what? Let's see. First off, this needs to be in here. Get things in the right places here. So this initiates the dodge. I want this part to initiate the dodge. So if the bullet's close, if they're able to dodge, then print a debug message, set them into the dodge state, turn the alarm for shooting on, and actually that needs to go in there too. Whoops. Okay. Don't allow them to shoot while they're dodging, and then that's all I need to do for that. Then if their dodge cooldown is less than that, then show them actually dodging. Otherwise, show them standing up. So I needed the greater than thing to trigger the equivalent of the player hitting the space bar, which is the stuff in here, but I needed the less than thing for the animation. So that's one problem. And then bullet-wise, as long as they are currently dodging. Oh, actually, let's just go with not. It's probably easier to remember that way, because if they are not currently dodging, then do this stuff. And I need to do that for the bullet as well. If they are not currently dodging, then destroy that. It's a little more processing work, but I don't think a not statement is gonna chug anyone's computer. It makes it easier to read the code, so I think it's just better to go that way. There we go. Okay, now things are behaving a little more like I expected. They are still getting hit, it looks like, which is no good. The bullet is disappearing. Interesting. The bullet is still getting destroyed even though they're dodging it, because they're not dying. So this part is fine. It's just this part that's not fine. So actually, maybe I shouldn't do this. I should probably do this. So if they collide with a bad cowboy, then take that that specific bad cowboy's cooldown. And actually, this EM dodge cooldown, it probably doesn't know what that is. I'm surprised it didn't give me an error. Well, this one seems to be working fine, so we'll see. See if that helps. Hopefully it does. There we go. Okay, good. I think the problem was when I was stating bad cowboy, it was having the bullet detect for just some random bad cowboy, who knows which one, which is why the bullet still, detects, hey, I hit a bad cowboy, it's time to disappear. Whereas the bad cowboy code, because it knows which bad cowboy it is, it worked fine. So now I'm to the point where these bad cowboys are really hard to kill. It seems things are still not quite where they need to be. They're also dodging their own bullets, which is weird, but let's see. They seem to be dodging. They're not dying properly, even though the bullet's disappearing. So something about this condition is different than what I've got going on in here. And I'm not sure why that is. If they're currently dodging, if they're not currently dodging, then do this stuff. Maybe I will just get rid of the not first. And I don't know, let's take this out, see if it helps. Because hopefully it knows to use the EM dodge cooldown from this other, as it works for the player. So it should work for the bad cowboy too. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're messing up this time. kind of hard to tell because they're pretty much invincible with the current parameters, which is goes to show how powerful the player's dodge ability is, because theoretically the player can dodge just as well as these guys because they've got the same cooldown. The enemy is dying and the bullets are disappearing, so it seems to be all right. Let's assume it's working for now. And there's two parameters I'm probably going to want to adjust because they're able to dodge the red bullets, which is not what I want. I probably only want them to dodge the gray bullets because they're the weakest enemy type. So I need to adjust that distance to be just enough where they can dodge gray bullets, but they can't dodge anything else. So that's going to take a little bit of experimentation. Let's see. One other thing I need to do is probably change that cooldown a little bit. This is probably something I want, not as a global, but as something for the enemy themselves. What would be a good place to put this? I guess it makes sense to put all this stuff in the enemy class, so what I'm going to do, because this is one of those things I'm going to want to be able to change from enemy to enemy. Not sure what that pasted. Well, let's not use pasting then. Let's see, em dodge weight. Let's set this to room speed times 5 seconds. So 5 seconds between dodging. And now, instead of using this room speed times global cooldown, I just want to keep using that. Because right now the enemies use the same cooldown weight as the player, which is too fast, making them almost invincible. And I need to go over here. And hopefully I changed all the right places. So hopefully it should be 5 seconds before they can dodge again. We'll find out. No, that means they dodge for 5 seconds. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Wrong variable. Okay, let's see. That is the wrong variable, isn't it? Let's see. If this is this, if em dodge cooldown is greater than dodge weight, then that's fine. So this one I think is fine as it was, I think, or as it is now. I think this I need to change back to what it was before. So let's grab that player thing. Let's grab this. Because the global dodge cooldown is serving 2 functions at the moment, which is probably not a very good idea, actually. One, it's serving to determine how long they dodge. The other thing is how long before they can dodge again, which is not good. Even if it is more efficient this way. Step. What else do I have? Okay, so those three need to change back. This one also needs to be changed back. Okay, well that should do it. I changed that because there's a chance. Whoops. EM dodge. Did I misspell something? EM dodge. Wait. Might just be the order I did these things. Okay. It's probably just the order I put those in. Because the enemies had to wait like 5 seconds or so before they could dodge, but because it started out at 0. Okay. Seems to be alright. Animation-wise, it looks like they're dodging as long as the player. It looks like the blue bullets are hitting them, which is interesting. They do seem to be pretty capable of dodging the gray bullets. As long as they have time to react, they're pretty able to dodge the gray bullets. The only problem right now is when they shoot, they also dodge, so I probably want to have something where if they're shooting, they don't dodge for a few seconds. It makes sense too, because if they're shooting, they shouldn't be able to dodge. May want to do the same thing for the player. No, probably not. Okay, so if they shoot, I don't want them to dodge, so I want, in that case, to do what? This is where having the wait until they can dodge and the dodge animation be the same variable is going to kind of mess with me. As if I change one of them, it'll change the other one. So if they shoot, then suddenly they're going to start ducking, and that's not quite what I want. Should I break those two variables up? Maybe. It's kind of a make or break moment because I can think of an easy solution, but whether that easy solution is going to screw me up later when I forget about it kind of has me worried. Because what I could do is if EM shoot is 1, that means they've just shot, which means, you know, you could look at that and say don't duck if they've just shot. I'm not quite sure that's what I want to do. What I want to do is change this cooldown to 0 if they've just shot. So I'm going to do this the proper way, which means it's going to take a little more time to fix, because it'll probably save me hours and hours later. So if they shoot, I want to reset their cooldown to 0. And just to show you what this is going to do, I mean, I guess it's the same thing they're doing now because they are ducking after they shoot, but it's going to be for a different reason. Okay, well that part seems to be working now. It's time to fix the rest of this. So what I need to do is break this up. Paste. I need to not have just a cooldown variable by itself. I need to have another one that says whether they're dodging or not. And it's going to act a lot like shoot does. So let's think about it this way. Are they currently dodging or not? 0 means no. I'm also going to want a new alarm which resets that to 0. And if they dodge, then say, yes, the enemy is now dodging. And then here, instead of doing this, to, you know, if they're still in cooldown mode, then they're dodging, is what I'm thinking in logic here right now. But the problem with that is, you know, the time before the next dodge is actually different from whether they're dodging or not. Whether they're dodging or not is like a second, but waiting for their next dodge is 5 seconds. So those need to be split into 2 different variables, even if up until now, because the player was able to do them kind of as the same thing, I got away with it. But let's do this properly. So if they are dodging, if EM dodge is true, basically, then have them duck. If it's not true, then have them stand up. And also, here as well, if they are dodging, then they cannot move. And I also need to add an alarm in here. Which sets that dodge thing. And this has to be, let's see, whether they're dodging or not. This has to be that global dodge cooldown thing. Yeah, I need to rename that variable too, because that's going to confuse me, because right now dodge cooldown is actually the weight. So it's like dodge weight, even though it says cooldown. So dodge 1, set the alarm. Let's put those together so I know what they go with. And let's see, this one as well. If they are not dodging, then they get killed by the bullet. Same here. If the enemy is not dodging, then the bullet needs to disappear because it went into the enemy's head. Let's see what that does. make sure I didn't introduce new bugs. Okay, it seems to be working fine. Yep. Yeah, they're definitely getting killed by ricochets and things like that. They're dodging the easy bullets, which is good. They do seem to have 5 seconds. Yep, they have about 5 seconds where they can't do their next dodge, so, you know, if enough bullets are on the screen, they eventually get killed. That seems to be working okay. Everything there seems to be working okay. Now the only thing is, let's see, did I fix that one problem? I need to check. I need to check if they dodge after they shoot their own bullet. Okay, that seems to be fixed too. And also, if they've just shot, then I should be able to shoot them back. Oop, I guess I died. Okay. This is kind of a hard one to test. Because my reactions are... Okay, good. After they've shot, they have to wait a certain number of seconds before they can dodge, which means, you know, they're not just ducking right after they shoot, because what was going on before was they would shoot, but the bullet would be, you know, right out here when they shot and traveling away. The problem is, because that bullet is close enough to them, it triggered that whole, you know, a bullet is close to me, I better duck thing, that reaction. And actually, you know, I was kind of expecting them to look funny when they're dodging bullets that aren't that close to them, but it doesn't look as weird as I thought it would. It actually kind of makes sense, as it's not so bad that, you know, like that enemy didn't dodge that, for example. But it kind of looks like, you know, if the bullet's close enough where, yeah, maybe it's dangerous, then maybe I should duck. So I don't need to do as much with that as I thought I needed to. Like I said at the beginning of the show, what I was worried about was, you know, like this bad cowboy here, for example. You know, the bullet is passing back and forth under him. It's not actually coming at him, but he's still dodging it. And I was worried that would be really, really weird. In this case, it kind of is, because he's, you know, just standing in place, you know, kind of dodging this bullet that's obviously not going to hit him. So this is one of those cases where it is kind of weird. But in general, it's not as weird as I thought it would be. You know, I thought I had to calculate to make sure that the bullet is going to hit them in X number of seconds. Maybe I don't need to do that, but it looks alright. But what I will do is maybe add a note to Trello here and say, is it worth fixing the enemy dodge to detect if the bullet is projected to hit them or not? And then just so that I remember what it is now. Currently, the enemy dodges anything within a certain distance. Okay. You know, just for later, just so I kind of remember what I was doing. The dodge is now working, so that's fine. The next thing is going to be kind of a big change. So what I'm going to want to do is, first off, back this up. Oops. Back the whole project up. In case I screw things up royally and can't get back to where I was, I don't want to lose all this work. You know, normally when you're working with a game or software project with a lot of different files and stuff, you use something like called a source repository. No, it's not medicinal. What it is, you know, if you have a team working together, even if you're on your own, if you've got a lot of files that you're working with, like graphics, source code, libraries, all this stuff, and you're constantly updating stuff, um, what happens if one day you introduce something that breaks everything and you can't figure out how to get back to where you were? It means everything that you've done up until that point is now worthless, unless you can figure out the problem. What source repository? One example is SVN. There's other ones as well. Perforce, for example. What they do is it's kind of like a library. You check out a file when you want to work on it. You check it in when you're done, and it keeps a record of all of that history, so that say I break something in episode 11. Well, whatever I checked in at the end of episode 10, at least I can go back to that. So the more often you check out and check in, the better, the more granular your history is going to be. You usually want to do something like that because you don't want to just break your entire game and not know how to get back to where you were. At the very least, you don't want to lose months of your life. You just want to lose like a day or a couple of hours. What I'm doing now, for example, I changed some of the variables here and I can't figure out how to get back to where I was at the end of, like, say, episode 9, which was last week. Then all that work up until now may just be for nothing. It's kind of scary. What I'm doing now is kind of the easy way to do it, I guess, which is just backing up the whole project. Thankfully, Project Spaghetti Game Maker just has one folder. You can copy it over, so that at least, if I screw this up, I can jump back to this. It's alright, but, I'm also, for example, working with Photoshop files and things like that, so what happens if I mess one of those up? Well, I haven't been copying and pasting all of those. So, that's the advantage of using a source repository. You can put everything in there. You can put graphics files, you can put GameMaker project files, you can put everything in there and check in, check out when you need to, so that you can always get back to a state where things were working. At least, don't lose progress. So if you do start a project, especially if you're working with a team, even if you're working on your own, it's better to do that. But if you're working with a team, what happens is, if you have two people working on the same file, or one person uploads, makes one change, another person makes another change, and they kind of conflict with each other, then you can't figure out, what's going wrong, who's got what, who's changed what. It becomes impossible to track, especially if you have, like, 10 people or 20 people or 50 people, 100 people, Assassin's Creed style, giant teams or something. You're never going to get to the bottom of why things aren't working. So if you're working with a team, you absolutely need a source repository. If you're working on your own, you can kind of fudge it like I am, but it is playing with fire. If I do break something and I forgot to back something up, etc., not a good idea. Might be something I look into. So I should make a note of that, actually. At the very least, to show you what it is. So and I'll keep that as a question mark. If anything, it'll show you what I am, because what I'm talking about, because just in explaining it in words, it doesn't really make much sense, but once you see it in action, it really does make sense. It is like a library, checking things in and out. So the thing I want to do now is parent this bad cowboy to the enemy. And that's going to be extremely tricky. No sprite. Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see how I go about this, but first thing I did was copied the bad cowboy, everything in the bad cowboy, to something called enemy, another object. What I want to have happen is all the important stuff that's shared between all of the enemies is inside of enemy. What makes this specific bad cowboy different from everyone else goes into here. So when I make changes to everybody, it goes in here into enemy. When I just make changes to bad cowboy, all I have to do is change in here. This debug code is probably going to be the same for every enemy type. Drawing the self is going to be the same for every enemy type. And theoretically, I pulled out the sprite so that there's no drawing of sprites and stuff. I need to pull it out of here as well. This stuff. So this is specific to Bad Cowboy. I'm going to take a big risk and just delete all of this. And GameMaker is panicking on me. What are you doing? This is exactly why I backed things up, by the way, because this is quite a big change. Okay, and what was I wanting to move over? Stuff from begin step. This is stuff I wanted to move over. Okay. Also, one thing you should know about parents and children is if you've got something that you've defined in parent, at least for GameMaker's case, if you've got something in parent and you do the same thing in child, the stuff in child will take precedence over the stuff that goes in here. Now, whether that's on an event basis or whether it's on this stuff is something I'm about to find out. And I need to say the parent is enemy. First off, let's see if that breaks the game. Looks alright. Looks like they're still moving, for example. Probably still shooting, hopefully. We'll find out. They still ducking? Doesn't look like they're shooting or ducking, so what I'm suspecting is that because I have a begin step for this bad cowboy, it's overriding the begin step for this enemy. So none of this is happening. It seems pretty obvious because they're not dodging and they're not shooting, and all that stuff is in this begin step. This is also one more reason why it's probably just easier at the end of the day to do everything in code instead of using the GameMaker GUI, because then it's just a matter of copying or referencing the same functions and everything else. With this, it kind of defeats some of the purpose of having an enemy if I have to copy all of this over into Bad Cowboy. Because, for example, showing pathfinding is not really something I need to define for every single enemy type, or I shouldn't have to. Well, alright, just to get this working, to give me a base to kind of fix things, I guess I will copy all of this over. And I think I know how to fix this, but okay. So now that's working, and I'm sure they're shooting too. Yeah, okay. That's fine. I think I know how I need to go about fixing this. Probably what I need to do is create a variable that stores that sprite stuff. So sprite normal. Let's just call that that. And hopefully I can get away with this. I'm pretty sure I can assign sprite objects to these variables, but we'll find out. Oh, whoops, that's the one that should be normal. That's the one that should be dodge. And I'm going to need to do that for dodge too. Until I have more than one enemy type, it's going to be kind of hard to see what I'm actually changing here. Don't worry about it too much. Make sure I'm calling that the right thing. Yep. And I do want to change that for here. Oh, that's kind of annoying. If I put a create thing in there, then I'm going to have to change all of this stuff, aren't I? Alright, well, let's get rid of this begin step. Yes. And add a create. Guess I should just copy everything over. Okay, so theoretically, this should set up all the variables that its parent class needs to work with. We'll find out. So they should be able to dodge and shoot as before. Yep, there we go. Okay, so that's working fine. Just to test this, I'm going to want to create another enemy type just a battered cowboy. I'm just going to do the simple solution, which is to, let's see, where am I? Jump into Photoshop and just change the color of the face, you know, go old school. So bring over my Commodore 64 palette, which I've been using to kind of keep that retro look, and because I like the Commodore 64, not sure where it went. Disappeared on me. Okay. View. Window. Workspace. There we go. Sometimes things disappear on me. So I want to take this bad cowboy and change the color on it a little bit to give me another enemy type to work with. I'm so used to using Blender, I keep hitting Control and zoom and stuff, when in Photoshop it's like Alt and mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So let's see, let's change the face color to something like, how about green? Seems easy enough. You know, really old school games, because of memory and things like that, they just use the same sprite but swapped colors on them to have a different enemy type. Doing the same thing here. And I need to make sure I don't overwrite the bad cowboy. So let's call this battered cowboy. Kind of uncreative naming there, but let's get the sprites out of here. call this one Badder Cowboy Dodge. Okay, well that gives me my basic, yeah, that's fine. Gives me my basic sprites to work with. Once again, I should actually copy and paste everything so that I don't have to fiddle with collision and all that stuff. Badder Cowboy, and I need to stretch that out. Okay, and I also need the dodge for that one too. Sprite Badder Cowboy Dodge, and pick up that one. Stretch it out to fit my resolution, and we're good to go for that. Now I want to copy this Bad Cowboy to Badder Cowboy, and I want to change the sprite it uses to Badder Cowboy. Okay, so now I've got these two types of enemies. And I don't, am I doing anything here? Bad Cowboy. Okay, I seem to have been clever enough to do some of this stuff in advance, thankfully. So what I need to do is fiddle with this array, which I think is all up here somewhere. There we go. Okay. Whew. Thankfully I did all this stuff before, thinking into the future. That's why thinking of things in advance can help you out a lot later. I didn't actually have anything that specifically said create Bad Cowboy inside of the enemy spawner, so that I could just fiddle with the values here and it would automatically do what I needed it to do. One other thing I need to change as well is I need to change this to enemy. Change event. Collision with enemy. Does the player have a collision with enemy event? No. Barrel? No. System, border, Bad Cowboy. Okay, so enemy. I need to change this one as well. Because right now it's the collision stuff is only working for the Bad Cowboy type of enemy, but I want it to work for all enemies the same way. Hopefully that works. Hopefully when I duplicated it, it also duplicated the parent thing. Yep. Alright, well that guy's fine at least. Hopefully a green guy shows up. 2, I guess the third one I made green, right? No? Well, no one's green, so that's unfortunate. That needs to be fixed then. Room manager. Spawn array. Badder Cowboy, that's fine. Yeah, the second enemy should have been green. Badder Cowboy. Instance create and RM enemy array. Oop. Oh no, no, that's fine. Okay. What's this 0 thing? Yeah, what is this 0 thing? That's fishy. Let me see what that is. No, that's fine. Okay. 1 0 is bad cowboy, 2 0 is badder cowboy, so that's fine. Okay, phew. Glad I don't have bigger problems than I thought I did. Okay, so that should be badder cowboy. Bad cowboy indicator. Let me put a debug statement in here. I can never remember what they call that. Let me jump over here to enemy. I think I had some debug code in here. Yeah. I just want to make sure that it is trying to spawn a badder cowboy object here before I drive myself crazy trying to debug this. I don't want quotes because I don't want it to just say that. Okay, well, let's see what this does. Hopefully it doesn't crash on me. Hopefully GameMaker knows what to do with it. 6, 7, 6, 7, 6. Okay. Well, I'm assuming that like 6 and 7 and all that stuff is representing what class this is somewhere behind the scenes. Unfortunately, it's not giving me the name of the object, but you know, I think there were like 2 green guys and there were like 2 6s or something, so I think it's fine. It's just the way they're being drawn. Badder cowboy. Parent is enemy. The sprite is indeed badder cowboy, so that's fine. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, that would cause a problem because I didn't change these sprites. Even though I had this sprite defined, you know, the first step in the game, it checks if the cowboy's dodging or not. If they're not dodging, then it just replaces the graphic with whatever's in here. And I had it still at bad cowboy. So it swapped the green guy out with the red guy out before I could even see the green guy. That should be the only problem. Hopefully the green guy shows up after this. Brilliant. Okay. So now I have 2 types of enemies coming out. They behave the exact same way, so they're not really different enemy types, it's just the way they look. So to see if I can get them to behave differently, now I'm going to start fiddling with some of these things here. I'm going to make the green enemy the harder one, so they're able to dodge more often. Let's see, what else? EM direction, base speed. Maybe I'll make them a little faster too. I also kind of want to add to the score, make them worth more points. Let's see, what else can I change? That's fine. There's one more thing I want to change, which is how often they shoot. I must not have pulled that out into a variable. I must have hard-coded it in there somewhere. Yeah, see right there with the chance 1 out of room speed times 5. So once every 5 seconds they get a chance to shoot or something. I need to pull this room speed times 5 out into a variable so that I can have something I can change for the different enemy types. So I will call that shoot frequency. And And I'll make the default 5, so for any enemy that doesn't actually change this, it's just 5. But I do need to use that variable inside of here. So EM shoot frequency. And I need to add this to the creation code for the other guys. So for the normal cowboy, you know, keep doing things as he's done it so far. For the bad cowboy, on the other hand, let's make him a little more gun happy. And say he's, you know, gets a chance to shoot every 3 seconds. So with those changes, theoretically, the badder cowboy will be a lot more gun happy, but will be worth more points. Is also able to dodge a lot more often too. So as you can see, the base one's worth 100 points. And you can see the green cowboy's moving faster than the other guys. He's also shooting a lot more often, which makes him more dangerous. He's also dodging a lot more often. But that can also be turned to our advantage, because if he dodges a lot, then it gives you more chances to hit him right after he finishes dodging too. And just to show how many points he's worth, yeah, see, I had 100 points from shooting the first guy, and this guy was worth 200 points. So that's working just fine. It does look like the pathfinding is a little screwy. I think once I hit game over and start the game over, the pathfinding is all kind of screwed up. That's a bug I need to fix. So let's add that to our task list. Restarting a level screws up pathfinding. And since I have no idea what's causing that, I'm going to make that an hour-long task. And let's label that a game design issue. And that should probably come a little bit higher than polishing up graphics, because it is a gameplay issue. Let's bring that in there. I'm also noticing there is, once in a while I've noticed that there's a bug where there's a certain timing where if the player dodges in a certain way or shoots in a certain way while they're dodging, then suddenly they're not able to shoot for the rest of the game. You might have seen that happen once or twice today. Just kind of had it in the back of my mind. Didn't want to deal with it yet, because it doesn't come up enough to have to deal with it right away. But, you know, if I were to put this out there, it's definitely something I wouldn't want people to have to deal with. So it is a mission critical bug. Okay. So looking at the task list, I did successfully parent the bad cowboy to enemy. I did that just now. That actually went a little faster than I expected. One more note I do want to check is game maker children overriding parents functionality. Look into. I want to look into this more, because it seems a little weird that, you know, I write a like, let's jump back to game maker, because this is going to be impossible to explain with just words. But, you know, in this enemy I have a create event. It seems kind of unintuitive for me that this create event, you know, even if I just have one thing in here, it overwrites all of this stuff. You know, the more I think about it, it makes sense, because this event, if it was a program, it would probably be like a function. So it's probably, you know, a create function. So if a child defines its own create function, it's overriding the parents function. Makes sense. It's just because the way it's done in like this GUI, it's kind of making me think that, you know, GameMaker could figure it out, but obviously that would, you know, that would be kind of impossible for a game studio program to figure out. You know, it doesn't know what I'm trying to do, obviously, so makes sense. If I just think of events as functions, then I think it'll be pretty clear. The problem is there's only one create event, so you know, there's probably some of these variables like, you know, for example, hold distance, offsets, you know, EM shoot, the fact that there's an EM shoot and an EM dodge variable, you know, that's never going to change from enemy to enemy, but I still have to define it up here and create for every single type. You know, if there was a way to get away with that, fine. Probably the way to do this properly is to pull all of this stuff that I don't need to do every time out into like its own script and then just have everyone call that. That's probably the way to go in the future. But, you know, just to see if GameMaker does have functionality which says, you know, don't overwrite this part in the children or whatever, it's worth looking into, because GameMaker does kind of surprise me sometimes with, you know, how capable it is. It did do the bad Dirt Cowboy sprite, which was just, you know, making the face green. The bad Dirt Cowboy does shoot. That didn't take any time at all because they shoot the same way, they just shoot faster and dodge faster, etc. Let's see, move GUI, draw out player. Let's do that really fast if I can get away with it here. We're kind of running out of time for today, but I think I can do it. Just in case. You know, I'm starting to get paranoid here, so I probably should have a source check-in system in case I screw things up. Right now, all these, like, you know, drawing the number of lives, drawing the score in the upper right corner of the screen. Sorry, you know, the way the camera's mirrored, upper right corner of the screen. All that stuff is being done within the player objects, but that doesn't make any sense, really. I mean, I guess it kind of does if you think of the user as the player, but this should probably be in system, because it's not specific to the player per se. Oh, I love the cutting and pasting in here. No idea where this is going to show up, so I'm going to put it first. Because at least when you put it in the beginning, it seems to paste properly. It's just when you paste at the end, I think it doesn't know that you want to put it at the end, so it puts it one line before the end, and then it kind of screws everything up. Okay, so now all of that, you know, drawing the GUI stuff is in system. So I should be able to take it out of player. Just the whole thing, take it out. Let's see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't break the game. It does break the game. Get PL bullets. Okay, well that's an easy one to fix. Player. Because I need to check the player's bullets. Because I moved all this stuff out into systems, so it doesn't know what these variables are. Just need to say these variables are all look inside of player for these things. And the reason it's worth doing this way is, you know, what if in the future I wanted to make it a two-player game? So it's probably better to move all of this out and just say player. Seems to be kind of shifted a little bit. Everything's kind of shifted off. Why is that? Draw the lives as an image. 0, 0. because I didn't have this relative thing checked, so it shouldn't make a difference. Yeah, that's kind of weird. All the GUI stuff has been kind of shifted over, and I know exactly what it is. Like I know why, and well, how it's shifted over is if you look at this. If you look at this screen, you see that I have all this like gray area that I added before, so that enemies could come from off the screen. Now, because I'm not using the player as a base for like the coordinate system, everything's kind of shifted over here to fit. So I'll need to figure that out, but I'll just leave that as something I need to debug. So let's see, that shouldn't take too long to figure out, but let's make that my high priority task. That's something I may do after the show as well, because it's not that important, and I'll just report on how I fixed it. So I think that wraps it up for today. Let's see here. What did I get done today? Sorry I didn't explain everything as I was going, because I was kind of trying to fix things and, figure things out on my own as well. So, in some cases I didn't know how to explain until I got things working. But it all worked out in the end. I did make the bad cowboys, dodge graphic. I did have them finally dodging. That took a lot longer than I expected. That was about an hour's worth. So, kind of a trend I'm noticing is that all of these actions are taking longer than I expected. Other things are taking less than I expected. So, it balances out in the end. But I should probably, double all of my estimates for these action things to make them a little more accurate in the future. I did manage to parent the bad cowboy to the enemy. This didn't take an hour, which made up some time for me. And I drew the green version, the battered cowboy. And I got them shooting, which was, pretty much nothing at all, because I was doing using the same systems. And I did move the GUI draw out of player, created a bug with it, but, that's something that does need to get fixed, because I can't have all the GUI stuff attached to player. I need to have it attached to, the system, because it should be outside of the player. So I did get a lot done in episode 10 here. And let's go ahead and make plan out what we're going to do next week. Almost there. This is going to take longer and longer every episode. I need to figure out how to insert a card in between these things in Trello. Okay, so episode 11, let's move that over here. And you can go to this Trello site anytime you want to. If you follow the link down in, if you're watching this on Twitch now, there should be a link down in the FAQ. If you're watching this on YouTube, usually, the first time I load up Trello in the video, I have like an annotation with the link. It's also available from www.bluetengu.com. If you go to Games Project Spaghetti, there should be a link to this as well. It's all public. If you don't have the Scrum for Trello plugin, you might not see some of these hours and things like that, but the information's all there. So for next episode, I want to fix that bug, because that's going to be very distracting. System level manager. Yeah, I think it's about time to do that. What this task is right now, when I finish a room, all it does is go to the game over screen. What I want is something that says, if the player has cleared the first room, move to the second room. If they've cleared the second room, move to the third room. It's just something that goes in the background there. To do that, I'm probably going to have to create another empty stage. System, let's see, room. What am I calling these things? Stage? Let's take a look here. I might just be calling it like town level or something. Okay, let's just say... let's see. I'm sure it's one of my lower priority tasks to create other levels, but let's just say graveyard level. Okay, graveyard level rough. That should take no time at all. And all this task is going to be is, there's not actually going to be a graveyard graphic or anything like that. That comes much later. All I want is something that says, you know, just a placeholder room, a placeholder stage, so that when I'm, you know, when I've killed all of the enemies inside of this, you know, Wild West Town Stage 1, it just moves the player to the next room, which will be empty for a while. But, you know, just so it's not game over. And it gives the system level manager something to work with. Title menu kind of goes with that, because once I have a system level manager in place, what I can do is say, you know, right now the title screen is level 0. If the player hits start, move to room 1, which is that town that we've been playing in so far. If, you know, they beat that town, then go to room 2. If they die, then go to game over. You know, just all those branches. To do that, I'm going to have a title menu. And, you know, to do that, I'm going to need a basic graphic that says, you know, press, you know, if it was a controller or a console, press start to begin the game, or if it's PC, press space to do the game. Options menu stuff, we'll see how I do with this. First, if I can get all of this working, which I hope I can, then I'll move on to the options screen and maybe put that in. Not actually have any of these controls attached to it, but just have an option screen so that the player can pause. Actually, let's move the pause screen higher than the option screen, just so that the player does have the ability to pause, and I can attach the option screen to that later. So next week, this is what I'll try to get to. And turn off my desktop here. Okay, but you saw what I was doing. Thank you for watching the show. I hope you were able to follow what I was doing with, you know, classing out the bad enemies and getting them to dodge and everything else. Like I said, because I was debugging a lot of stuff, couldn't really fully explain things as I was going along, but hopefully you were able to follow along, at least to see what kind of progress I was making. And, you know, I do this every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. in Japan, where I live. So for those of you who are on the West Coast, if you want to catch this live, it's over at Twitch TV/Blue Tengu. You know, follow us if you do Twitch stuff, if you follow Twitch stuff, and you'll know exactly when we're on. I do this 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Japan time, which means if you're in the States, it's still daylight savings time, I think. So that would be 4 to 6 p.m. on Fridays if you're Pacific, 5 to 7 Mountain, 6 to 8 Central, 7 to 9 p.m. on Friday night if you're Eastern time. If you're in the UK, it's midnight to 2 a.m. on Saturday. If you're here in Japan with me, obviously it's just 8 to 10. Same as me. If you're in Australia, depending on where you live, it starts between 9 and 11 a.m. because you're on daylight savings time as well. And if you're in New Zealand, I think it starts at noon on Saturdays. So, you know, come on over, say hi. And, you know, if you don't have time to watch us on Twitch, we put all the episodes up on YouTube, youtube.com, Blue Tengu Studio. Definitely subscribe if you like what we're doing. I also do the Unplugged show where I just play, you know, let's play games. And I do tend to focus on a lot of like indie stuff and things like that, so games that you might not ordinarily see. So definitely catch that as well. Follow on Twitter, it's btengu, And I also make announcements on when I'm starting Twitch and when episodes are up on YouTube and all that stuff on Twitter. So that's probably the easiest way to follow what we're doing. Also, we're on Facebook.com, Blue Tengu Studio, Google Plus as well, because that's tied into the YouTube account and everything else. And hope to see you next week. If you do have any questions, post comments to YouTube or www.bluetengu.com where we are. Send me an email. Let me know, and I'll try to address it the next show. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.